Hey, good stuff, family. This is a really good one today. This is a really good one. This is our new friend. Travie is you're familiar with Travie, but he happened to be on a plane. And I want you to think of this the next time you plop down next to someone. It was the last seat left. And
I was on a Southwest Airlines flight, and everybody knows there's open seating, no assigned seating. So they said every seat is going to be taken. And the one next to me, I was on the aisle, and then there was one on the window, and then the middle one was open. And so a pilot, a female pilot, came through with her uniform on, and Courtney, you can explain exactly.
It was Courtney Schoch, and her name is so appropriate. And we've been trying so hard to get this to you. I started out this way, though, because literally we say God.
I'm not finished with my story.
Well, he sat next to her.
She came and sat next to me, and we got to talking, and I said, this is an incredible story you have. And my friend Dawn in Cleveland tells stories about people who are doing really good things. And where do you live? And she said, Westlake. And I said, that's where Dawn lives. So they live like a mile or two apart from each other.
Yes, right.
Boom. So I said, Donnie, you got to meet this person.
So her story.
You can talk now.
You guys, look, this is just my cryptic notes that I tried to bang out today, and I couldn't even get everything. Can you see how many? It's just, this woman is so inspirational. I want you to know who she is so that you can be inspired by her as much as we were. But it starts out with a childhood that was less than perfect, abusive, and then ended up dropping out of high school. But take us from that trajectory. You refuse to be defined by that. You set the trajectory from there.
That's right. That's right. So after I dropped out of high school, I ended up just being lost, closing my eyes, putting my finger on the map, and it ended up being in the middle of Lake Erie. And I grew up in Atlanta, so Lake Erie is pretty far away. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance. And I moved up to Cleveland, Ohio, in Ohio City, and moved into a little apartment over a restaurant and found myself pregnant. 6 weeks later, unexpected. Family wasn't very happy with that at all. And I ended up finding out also that the guy that got me pregnant was married, which I did not know. So that was pretty horrific in itself. And we ended up getting together. I ended up working as a stripper to make ends meet. And that relationship was also abusive. It was really terrible. We ended up getting married and getting divorced about a year or so later. Then I ended up, like I said, stripping, doing what you have to do. I later decided that I needed to have a better job. So I joke and I say that I was climbing the ladder, like with every additional layer of clothing I was putting on. So I went to work at Hooters, and then I was bartending. And when I was bartending at BW3, I ended up meeting my second husband. We had a daughter, and things were fine. I was looking for a little bit of stability. And one day when the children were, my youngest was about 2 years old, I just felt like I needed to have more in my life. And so I was flipping through the entertainment book, the coupon book, and I found a coupon for a $50 flight lesson at Burke Lakefront. And the funny part is that I had a terrible fear of flying.
Right.
And so I went up
and what do you do for a living now?
Now I'm a pilot. I'm a pilot. So I was a captain for United Express for 14 years. And then I recently just started as a first officer with Southwest Airlines, which has been amazing. So I find this coupon. I go up with shaky, like little hands, open the door, go up into there with a female flight instructor, and just fell in love with it. And after I landed, I went home and I was all excited. And I told my husband, I said, hey, I think I can do this. And what does he say to me? He's like, I think this is going to be too expensive and a little too hard for you to do, you know? And and that was it. Like, you say no. And that was just the spark that I was like, I'm going to do this. So I worked extra shifts, bartending. I ended up, working all night, and during the day, I took flying lessons and slept, and take the kids to school during the day, come home, go to work, study, and people would laugh at me, like all the bar patrons, as I was going through my flashcards. They're like, yeah, sure, you're going to be a pilot.
And that's all you needed.
That's all I needed. And I ended up getting my bachelor's degree. I got my GED, and I got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, and off I went and became a pilot. And then there's more to the story, but I don't know if you guys want to interject anything because I don't want to just
Yeah, no, I hear
roll
you.
on.
But this is why when we talk about overcomers, that's the best good stuff we often say come from the really crappy stuff.
Mhm.
Things that you had no control of as a child, and then bad decisions that you owned. This is
Yes.
super important. It's not about being perfect. It's called owning it and pledging to be better for it. And in my case, not being defined by it. Because I felt like as a broadcast news reporter for years and years, every day I would say, Dawn Kendrick, whatever station I'm working at, 5 different TV stations. So literally every day, that was my identity. The problem I find is when we get stuck in something that we've been labeled as, like your husband, you can't do it.
Mhm.
Just keep on pushing through because that's where the good stuff and now the great stuff that she's doing now. I mean, literally, you're not even the good stuff. You're doing great things that only a small percentage of people can do or bother to do. And the odds were stacked against you.
They were stacked, and they were, like you spoke of, the labels that
Mhm.
people plaster all over you. Because for a lot of years when I was flying, I mean, almost 14, 15 years, no one knew I was a high school dropout or I had this imposter syndrome. You know, I'm flying with guys and gals that were in the military that are sitting next to me, and I'm thinking I was just this high school dropout teenage mother stripper of all things too, you know. And I put those labels on myself, and it sort of held me back for a while. And one day when I was at the airport, I was in the United Club, and there is a lady working there. Her name's Margot. We just struck up a conversation similar to Travis and I. You know, we were just having this conversation, and she said that she was a tutor at Seeds of Literacy here in Cleveland, and she tutored GED students. And I just thought maybe I need to come out publicly with my story, and that's what I ended up doing. And went and spoke to a small group of adult learners, and then I just changed it owning my story and not letting it own me and sharing it really was empowering. And so now I run these marathons globally to raise awareness and education or awareness and funds for adult literacy. Mm-hmm.
And like your bucket list wasn't quite full. So, and you started a nonprofit of your own in Guatemala.
Nicaragua.
Oh, Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was quizzing you. Anyway, who does that? Who does that? And wasn't it till like 42 that you were the pilot, right? You became
42 when I ran my first marathon.
Oh, okay.
I was in my mid-30s.
Okay. And then you said, I think I'm gonna go do something that's bigger than me and start a nonprofit.
I did. I moved to Nicaragua, fell in love with the people, thought that they were amazing. And I got my teaching English as a foreign language certification. I started teaching English while I was still flying. So I was living in Cleveland and commuting from Nicaragua, from Managua. And I was just teaching like on my off days, fell in love with it. For 4 years, I did that. And then I ended up moving back to the United States due to the political unrest with President Ortega in 2018, 2019. And then that's when I shifted my focus and came public with my story with Margot and with Seeds of Literacy. And then I started running these marathons globally to shift the focus from English to adult literacy.
I love that you mentioned imposter syndrome. We talk about it all the time I say reinvent myself, but not really. What I'm doing is trying to tell good stuff stories. It's the very thing I love doing. And that was just one conduit, one way that once in a while get them on, right? But once you start realizing you don't have to be defined, again, the imposter syndrome, I can't do that. This is what I am. I'm not that. No, I think that's where it starts. And then you continue, we call them really God, really moments where, getting pregnant, all these things that you would not have scripted. And it's like, sometimes it just chips away. It's painful, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
Like, ow. But here comes this fantastically sculpted version who is doing, not only is she leading, but you're leading by example as a good stuff. You're doing the good stuff because literacy, especially adults, that is the key for them to do the very same thing that you did if they, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to be something that I never had growing up was a solid role model. I didn't have someone I really looked up to that was like, oh, they were the underdog, they could do it. And that was one reason why too I decided to go and work for Southwest. If anyone knows Southwest Airlines story.
I love them. That's all we fly. I
Great.
love them. And that's another part of your story. I get it. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah, no,
sorry.
it's okay. No, it's okay.
We're really good friends now. Step right in and talk like we're
okay.
married. Sorry.
But yeah, Southwest Airlines, they were the underdog and they came up from, to lead, to be a leader. And that's what I feel like it's really important to, kind of walk the talk and really take some chances, because I've learned it's not about like what we get along the way, it's about who we become. And at the end of it, that's just really important. And
write it down.
When you said you never had a role model, I was talking to my mom a couple of years ago, who's very wise. And I said, it's so hard to find a hero, like especially as do what?
Kind of talk that way because the mic's up there.
Oh,
so we make sure. I don't know
it's hard to find a hero, because all of our institutions, we used to revere, and we've all seen them poked holes in. Priests, presidents,
right.
sports leaders, politicians, business people. It's like everybody, military heroes, everybody, we've seen that they're human just like everybody. So it's hard to find somebody that you really can look up to. And she goes, maybe it's time for you to be the hero, like for you to be the person people look up to. And it was like really like, whoa, that's a lot of weight.
That's impactful.
But
right.
yeah, but it was impactful. Yeah.
And then you get to choose what you do with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you've been in Cleveland, what, 31 years? Is that what you said?
About 30. Yeah.
And 22 for me coming up. But you picked it just with a finger on a map. Yeah. I came for a job and then another job. And now I'm actually moving back to St. Louis to be with family. It was the right decision. It was a hard decision. But we can still bring these stories to you from anywhere. So I'm like, all right, God, get ready to turn, if you would, is this the unstuck part where you're going to turn my walking papers into my permission slip? So for you, you had all these things working against you. Was it kind of a leap of faith for you too in that moment to say, I have all of these things, but the moment you knew you were unstuck and then you were unstoppable, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate. And there's still moments, I think it's as humans, we still wake up some days and we're just like, gosh, this is a lot, and I have to put one foot in front of the other.
You speak our language in more ways than one.
Oh, and it's you really sometimes have to dig in deep. And I think that may be why I picked running these marathons. Listen, people, I don't love to run. I'm going to be honest with you.
Does anyone really?
I do it because I'm doing it for something bigger than myself. And then it just is a reminder every single time that I go out there and I do something just to keep moving forward, that running is like a metaphor for life. You just put one foot in front of the other.
Literally one step at a time.
Yes, and action creates confidence. So like the more action we take, the more confident we get. And I think it's easy for us to get stuck and kind of, like in a ditch. And I still do that. I still find days where I'm like, wow, I haven't done anything for a while.
It's not a one and done. It's a practice.
Right. And I think with COVID, I think that just really knocked everybody back a little bit, or so many people.
Because you had a whole bunch of speaking engagements set up. You happened to do the one for the literacy people. And in the crowd happened to be.
There was Lancome L'Oreal, right? Yes. So marketing, I'm not sure if it was a marketing director, I'm not sure of her exact title, but she approached me and she said, you have to do a speaking event for us in New York City. And this was an event that I was doing in San Diego for a literacy organization for about 700-800 people. And I'm not a public speaker. No. So I was shocked, but they said, you got to come to New York City and you've really inspired us to bring like 10 or 15 of the inner city, like learners, and we're going to bring them in for a makeover. And we'd like you to be the inspirational speaker along with all of these makeup artists who do the Oscars and movies and stuff. And it was great. It was incredible. And they're the ones who encouraged me to write a book.
Yes.
So, yes.
And I keep thinking, you said, I'm not a speaker. Nor were you a captain, nor were you a owner of a nonprofit, nor were you a marathon runner. Nor can you even tell the exact titles of the degrees you got after your bachelor? There's so many. I had it in our intro. Like,
right.
I can barely spell all the names. Aeronautical. overachiever, nor were you any of that until you took the first step.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And also started asking myself better questions. I think that's a really important thing is sometimes we disempower ourselves and we say like, why is this happening to me? And why did I screw up? And instead just asking like, where do I want to go and how can I get there? And just start changing the language a bit.
We're a big fan of Bob Goff, and he always says, I hope that you can, if you're driving somewhere, that you can come back and take notes on this. The things that you're saying right here, and they're genuine, they're from a place of humility. And it's something to be said for someone who's been there, done that. And so I'm thinking of what all would have been lost if you had said, I'm just a high school dropout. Have you even begun to fathom what would have been, look at all of the things that you've accomplished and all the lives that you're touching now. Do you sometimes think, wait, you got to sit down and kind of even reckon with yourself, like, how did all of this happen?
I do, and occasionally, but I don't let myself go there too often.
Yeah, the past.
And sometimes, but often I remind myself, all of these things had to happen in order for me to be who I am now. There's a whole purpose and a reason. We don't always know what that is. Just have to have the strength and the faith that there's some bigger, higher power that's guiding you.
Amen.
And you don't always know what that is. You just have to believe in it in yourself. So, and like I think when we spoke earlier today, talking about faith, and I said, we know it's faith in humans, and in the humankind. Like I think we're all inherently good. And I think right now, even with all the tension and stuff, I think people genuinely just want to be good people, and just being kind to each other and raising your standards a little bit is really important.
That's what the whole Good Stuff family is based on, isn't it, Travi? And we're building it now. For years, I had a paycheck from local news affiliates, and I thought I was going to die doing that. And then the contract wasn't renewed. I'm sorry, what happened? And those are the moments that we are very vulnerable about, and saying, really, God, really? And then when you realize the capacity of what was untapped, that would have remained untapped had you stayed comfortable. And what I think I was doing is I was almost married to that career. I defined it completed me, because I didn't have a husband or kids. And so it completed me. And so I've decided and learned the hard way, the chipping, that as a rule, no one should complete you, especially husbands who don't believe in you, and no job should complete you. It should complement you. And that way, if the person changes, because the only thing guaranteed is change, you haven't, put all of yourself into being defined by that and being completed by it. So I learned this hard lesson. And then it gives you permission, in your case, to soar, literally. Right?
Yeah. And it's been great. And I think the best part is being able to touch other people. So even if there's just one person watching this live and it sparks something, that's all it takes. Just a little spark.
I want to touch quickly on when you said you were speaking to a group that makes billions probably in makeup. I spend my whole life under 500 layers of makeup on TV, 6 live shots, and it's just not lost on me that even that industry is recognizing when they're going to honor people who are not defined by how great they look in makeup. And that's why you were there. So even the people who they were honoring that day to be fed by your story, it doesn't end with just telling your story. It ends in ways we can never calculate. And all those people who left inspired. Did you get to meet any of those people who they were honoring?
Oh yeah, I met them all. So it was a really small group. It was maybe about 100 makeup artists or so, and about 15 of the inner city adult learners. And it was surprising because it was a very intimate affair. It was in their headquarters at Hudson Yards in New York, and just speaking on this very intimate level. And afterward, they're like, oh, if you have any questions for Courtney, come up, because the vice president of Lancome L'Oreal marketing was sort of like hosting this event. And every single person had a question. And all these people wanted to get like selfies with me and stuff. And I was like, what? This is so crazy. And they're like, you're just so inspiring. And it just felt good just to make somebody's day, or to have someone just think, maybe just change their thought on maybe something they're doing or even when they encounter someone else and people think, oh, that person was rude, or they label, right? They automatically judge. Maybe just by hearing me speak, to give them a brief moment to pause and to think, oh, I don't know what this person's going through, you know, and I shouldn't put them in this little box.
It's crazy how much more empathetic you become when you realize, seriously, do not judge someone.
Well, when you've either been there or
Yes.
you get to know somebody who is there or who has been there, you see there is an explanation a lot of times for how somebody got in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the one thing that seems to change people's mind more than anything else. You can make arguments and you can give them facts, but when they actually connect with someone who's been in this position that they've always looked down on, that's when it seems to click and change their mind, when they get to know that person and realize that's a human also.
It really is true. And I will tell you that there have been so many times that I have flown, because pilots, it's primarily male dominated industry. It's about 96, 97% male dominated.
4%
Yeah.
of the women when you became a captain.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. And when I became a captain, the statistics, I mean, this was back in 2011, but in the entire world for airline captains, it was something crazy like 423 or 500 females were airline captains. It was a really small number. I'm sure it's grown since then, but so many times I reflect back on conversations I've had with other pilots or just passengers sometimes, and, you know, they make, you know, weird, like, strange comments about, like, oh yeah, you know, a stripper this or a stripper that. And I'm thinking, I'm flying your airplane.
Right.
And I was a stripper, and you have no idea. You just never know, like, what somebody's background is. And I'm just a fierce advocate for the underdog, and just,
and the underdog to become overachievers. Like, everyone has a story. She didn't, for the record, she didn't call herself overachiever. That's my title, because I'm so aware. It fits. And that's the thing. She's so humble. Like, people who accomplish great things, for me personally, I don't give a you know what about your resume.
right.
How are you changing the world for better? How are you said purpose. What is the purpose that's going to outlive you? The legacy. And that, like, this is what she's doing. And if we could, we try to keep these to only 30 minutes. How long have we been, Charlie? ABC?
We're right at 30.
Okay. I just want to wrap that if I could, because I don't think there are any accidents.
No, we're at 22. Sorry.
Oh, for God's sake, then we have all this time. Just like in news, I
looked at the wrong clock. I could see that.
hilarious. That is funny.
That is funny. That is
When I
funny.
was in news, I tend to write long the way I talk. Yeah, I think they might be unisex.
I don't know.
They're dollar stores.
Oh, are they really? They're very handsome.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, we're
Whoa. Can you
Nobody's
see?
I've got
any
mine
younger.
too. Believe me, I've got
They're
mine
very-
over
They're
here.
very handsome.
I love the frames, the tortoise shell.
pretty sure
They're
they're
very
dollar store.
handsome. I'm
I
telling you.
like them. Yeah.
But to the point that no one is getting any younger. You know, I think that if you're spinning your wheels and you're working for someone or something, in the end, my head was saying, you better keep your nose to the grindstone. It's a fantastic job at a station I loved then, and I still love. Like, it was a blessing. Let's be very clear. I don't know half the people I know having not been given the opportunity at these stations.
Mm-hmm.
But my head was saying, oh, that great. I would come in maybe with a story like yours, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say, no one's got it. And some people will be so inspired. They were understaffed. So I was a lead reporter in the evenings.
Mm-hmm.
So great story, but we're going to need you to cover this. And I'd be like, all right, just do what you need to do. You know how the news is now more than ever. I don't even need to say. And maybe next time.
So the conversation, because since you haven't been there as a news reporter, it goes like this. I found this incredible story. This person who, she's a pilot and she does all this other stuff and she lives right here in Cleveland. And they say, oh, that's great. But there was a car wreck on the interstate, so we really need you to go live from there tonight.
Or worse things. And we don't need to belabor the negative.
But you know what we're talking about. We've all
things
seen
that
the
felt
evening
kind of
news.
like stirring the pot.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
But nonetheless, I'm like, I'll put my slant on it, and always under those headlines is some great good stuff story. You don't need, sometimes you just barely scratch it and you have it. So that's what my head said. And my heart honestly was going, nope, nope, nope. The head and the heart, the calling was, but did I have the courage to step on out? I did not. I'm old. It's the only thing I've done. I say old for the broadcast news business. Just flip on your TV at any moment. It's not so much experienced when you're a woman, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And so all of those things were truths, but they were not, I say they were not of God. They were not from the place that gets you to the places you've gone. So I'm almost embarrassed in hindsight that I didn't have the courage, but how my testimony is how God intervenes. And I felt like it was like, here's the deal. That was me. And I'm going to go ahead and move you over here. It's going to be painful. But let's see if you can practice what you preach, right? And so this is why I'm saying the way that you have lived by example, I wouldn't have chosen it. And you saw all the things that came up and you tackled them head on. For years, it wasn't going your way.
Oh, yeah. For a while.
Yeah,
you don't just flip a switch and
no.
All right, now I'm no longer a stripper. I'm now a pilot, and I'm flying. And it takes a long time.
It takes a lot.
And I wonder if people are watching. This is all we ask. Ask yourself today, what is it that you think you're not capable of, but your heart is knocking? Be honest and write it down. And then consider, I'm going to grab your book. I'm going to try to not get too close. But consider, if you want to know the whole story, this is the book that you can get. And consider taking a page from her book, because we did. And it was all because the only seat open on a plane was next to this guy who is working with this girl in Cleveland to get these stories out. And I sit back and I'm like, could not have scripted it. No. Whatever you're going through that you would not have scripted, keep writing the next chapter. Keep taking the next best step. Like with a lantern that gets you one step and then the next. Nobody's giving a spotlight to any of us.
That's right.
We take the next best step and the next best step and watch what happens. It's painful. It's super painful.
It is.
But it's full of promise.
It is. And I think taking a chance and getting outside of your comfort zone, and even, fear, I think sometimes fear is an example of, it's like the arrow pointing, like, this is what you need to be doing, what you're afraid of, just like the fear of flying or coming out with my story, things like that.
You have to be vulnerable.
And Courtney, you seem like you're really driven by things that challenge you. So things you're scared of, people who doubt you, circumstances that were beyond your control, where you were dealt a crappy hand. Do you think you're naturally that way, or do you have mornings where you say, I just don't have the energy today, I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to sleep till noon. And
it happens, I'm sure.
It definitely happens. And I think that I like to, the end of the day, know that I left it all on the field. I just, no matter how messy and dirty it is at the end of the day, I just love to know that I left it all out on the field. And some days, I am tired. Sometimes it'll go on for a week or two, and I'll be like, okay, I have to get my energy up, because it is, it takes a lot of energy. But what I'm driven by is I'm driven by something that's bigger than me. So it's not about me. And so I think that's when I remember that, that's what keeps me going. And at the end of the day, if I can put some good out into the world, then I know I've lived my best life.
Can I do a little bit of
our language? Can
I do some airline humor? Do you mind some pilot humor?
Sure.
Okay, so I just thought of this. Doctors are notorious for having bad handwriting, right? You can't read their prescriptions and what they say. And I find that like airline captains, do you take mumble lessons? So like when they come on the overhead, go,
it's so true. Sometimes I'm like, is he trying to do that?
Like Yuri over here, take a look on the right side, and then
mumble. The question is, do you have to take anti-mumble lessons?
There's a question on the floor.
Yeah, the question is, or the answer is that there is no answer. Some of us are just kind of, it might have just been a long day, Travis.
Can you give us like a 20-second sample announcement you might make to your passengers?
Oh, sure. In the air, on the ground.
And I guess you usually do it toward the end of the flight, don't you?
We do it, if I'm the pilot flying, I make an announcement at Southwest, like welcoming people on board. Okay. We're in the air, the traffic pass, you can get up and move around, or right before we land, we update people. So typically, like if I'm just like, hey, thanks for flying for Southwest for 20 minutes from late touchdown. We're going to be parking at C12. The weather in Cleveland is Who
Usually
knows?
cold.
Yeah, who knows? It changes every 20 minutes. But you know, we love you guys. Southwest loves that you've chosen our airline to fly on, and we love you. And we thank you for your travel plans.
Okay, you did not get the mumble memo. Is
I
that how
did
you
not.
sound?
Oh, I'm excited to talk to
Is that
people.
how
Are
you
you
sound?
kidding?
Is that how you
Oh
sound?
yeah, I love to talk to people.
Okay.
I like carry on like a whole thing. You know?
And
You should
when
see
he sat next to you, you guys gave
Oh
each
my
other
gosh,
a
we
run
just
for your
started
money.
talking.
The guy next to you is like, no.
Oh no, he was in the aisle.
I'm trying to
Oh,
remember.
okay.
I was
Oh,
the
okay.
aisle, so
Yeah,
then
and I
there
was
was
in the
there was
middle.
someone on the window.
And
Okay.
he or she was just sleeping. There's like
Okay,
put eye shades on and earplugs
The earphone,
in.
yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, we talked the whole flight.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't remember like how it just happened. It was
And-
great.
And when I picked him, he's like, you're not even gonna believe who I met. I love that you said, when you say we love you, LUV,
Mm-hmm.
Southwest is, for me, I feel honestly every time I'm on there like I know them. I say it's the common man's airline in that there's none of this hoity-toity, and it's real and it is palpable for me. How many times have I told you, and I've taken pictures of pilots who've let this little kid in to see, and he's all
Oh, yeah.
smiling and habitual. I mean, I shouldn't say, but I should say over and over consistently, things happen in the interaction with them, with and even the groundwork they have, like the 2 free bags.
Oh,
I sound like this is a commercial. This is not a paid endorsement. But when I heard that she switched from one airline to go to Southwest, took a pay cut, sit in the right seat instead of the left for a while,
that's correct.
because you connected with them.
That's right.
I love them.
And we-
LUV.
And we were going to call you, we were debating whether we could call you captain. And Dawn said, isn't it like a president? You always call them president, even if they're
You
not
can.
president
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. Because for a while after I left, I was thinking, gosh, my official title now is first officer, but I was a captain for 10 plus years. So what do we do? And someone had mentioned that to me too. They said, you're always captain.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I think it's fair. I don't think we're
I used
misrepresenting
to
anything.
work for the Attorney General's office in Missouri, and then the AG became governor. And so then he left office. He served his 2 terms. He got term limited, and then now he's a lawyer in St. Louis. And so I saw him a couple of years ago at his law firm, and I said to his assistant, "What do I call him? And do I call him Jay or do I call him governor?" She goes, "Well, he's made it clear that according to tradition, you're supposed to always call him governor. So we can always call you
You
captain."
can always call me captain.
Well, I call you good stuff.
Oh, well, thank you. And one other thing too, I just want to mention is the next marathon is in Antarctica.
I was going to say that.
that.
Because here's the thing, you've already run so many, but she's like, now I need to take on Antarctica. So how does a pilot who works often flying people, how is she going to go run a marathon in Antarctica, you ask? Well, if you work at Southwest Airlines.
You work at Southwest. Southwest is very supportive of doing good things, and they are being generous enough, unpaid, but to give me the time off to go run this marathon in Antarctica in March. So I'm very, very grateful for them.
And I know it to be true because I follow those posts like from
Mhm.
Bob Jordan, and these employees who work there, they're not, why would they go on and say if it wasn't true? They truly feel like they're valued for their individuality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you confirm that.
For sure.
And
Definitely.
it shows in their work, in what they give back to the company. It's not an accident that they're a #1 airline. Are they #1 airline?
They're the biggest domestic
Okay.
airline.
Well,
So, but in
for me, they're
customer
#1.
service, I think they still say Delta might be.
Okay.
But I don't know. You know.
Well,
Hey, Courtney, speaking of the marathons and the continents, how many continents have you now done fundraising marathons on?
Sure. So officially I've done 4. This will be my 5th. So Antarctica will be my 5th. And then I still have Europe and Australia. So this one will be for Seeds of Literacy. They're 20, which is adult education.
Here,
Located.
Cleveland.
That's right. Yep.
So
Yep. They
5
offer free one-on-one
This will
tutoring.
be, you'll have been on 5 continents.
So it'll be
once
5
this one
continents.
occurs.
Yep. 5 continents.
And believe it or not, there's, because of COVID, I remember you telling me this, blew me away, because of COVID and just demand, there's so much you had to wait 5 years to get your marathon in Antarctica because
Yes.
there's so much demand to go there, and you don't have a lot of land to run on, right?
No, my understanding, looking at the course map,
You've not been there, of course.
I have not been there. I have not been there, and they have us running amongst 3 of the research stations for 26.2 miles. So we're kind of just going in a loop and a track, but it's not too safe to just cut us loose in Antarctica.
Right.
And I don't know how many runners there are, maybe 30, 35 of us or so, not a bunch. So it's going to be exciting.
Because you said it's a fairly small area, so you kind of have to do a lot of laps, right? It's not like a Boston where you can run through the city.
No, it's not. It's not. And then we take a boat down. We leave from the southernmost city in South America. We take a boat through the Drake Passage, and that is something I am not a big boat person, so this is another little bit of a fear, to go in this small vessel.
He's just gonna be like driving a cruise ship.
And also,
right.
it's
I
not
get
like,
to see it.
it's not like Boston
that's
where you can, if you want to cheat, you can take the subway to the finish line. There is no subway in Antarctica. Remember that? You know that's a true story?
No.
Somebody took
Someone
the subway.
cheated.
Was it true?
I'm not
I want to say in the
surprised.
70s,
That's
some
kind of
woman ducked around the corner during the marathon, got on the
Oh
subway, took it to the end,
Yes.
and then came back in toward the last mile or so with everybody acting all
Oh,
out of breath and
no.
won. And then they eventually caught her somehow.
Wow.
This
That's crazy.
was
Now you can do
long
that
time
with the
ago.
GPS and everything, because
Right.
with the chips that they
Oh,
track
that's right.
you. So
Right.
That's
Yeah. I think it was Boston.
Yeah.
Maybe New York. I
I'm
don't know.
definitely not going to cheat. I'm slow enough as it is.
Mm.
So, and if anything, that was another motivator too. We talked on the phone this morning. Is I didn't run my first marathon until I was 42. I am not a teeny tiny girl. I joked, saying people think these runners are like these little teeny tiny like fairies that just glide over,
right.
glide over the ground. I don't. I feel like some days I joke and I say, especially after COVID, because I put on about 15 pounds, I feel like Winnie the Pooh running. It's just like, but it's great. It's just awesome. And so I would also encourage anyone to, like, just from a health standpoint, or you want to get out there and run. Once again, it's those labels and those stereotypes. Just get out there and just get your body moving. Don't let anybody hold you back. Don't worry about what other people think.
And then again, the notebook would be full right now if I was writing all of the quotables. And that's the thing for me. I ran before I had knee surgery, but every step about even a walk now is in gratitude, because it's not guaranteed.
That's right.
Right. And so, yeah,
Did you run marathons too?
I never made a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
I ran very consistently, but I never did a marathon. And then I had a shredded ACL is what the doctor called, from kickboxing. So we had a donor ACL, so I'm super grateful. We call him Nacho, as in Nacho ACL. Well, it's somebody else's ACL, Nacho. But again, as soon as I made that full revolution on the bike, and you know that you're going to get it back, leaky eye syndrome. And I was like, thank you, because you don't know. Patience, humility, gratitude. That's on that bike where I adopted that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I am super grateful, and just something to think about. If you can move, it almost feels like very disrespectful to the God who made our bodies to not move, take the next best step.
That's right. Like, have some respect for the home that you have here.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah. Well, I can't even thank you enough for taking this time. This is the book again. I can't wait to read it. And she's in Cleveland. We're super proud to be Cleveland Transplants officially. Is there anything else that you want to add at all, Courtney?
The only thing that I would like to add is that I just encourage everyone to, just try and ask yourself some better questions, more empowering. I always say that, your story, to own it, and it can either empower you or destroy you. So just choose to, in my opinion, to allow it to empower you, and to be kind to one another, and just keep putting good into the world. Not because you expect something back, but just because that's the right thing to do.
Amen. And align yourself with the people who are adjacent to what you're trying to do. Even if you take a pay cut, find those people who are adjacent that make your heart sing and celebrate the purpose.
And Don, as Wally observes, do you have any other good stuff representatives in the sky? Wally refers to Courtney as the good stuff in the sky. Can
Wally
she be the official representative of the good stuff family in the sky?
I can definitely do that.
Well, Don has to approve it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
I'll check with our attorney.
Yeah, make sure it's
Okay.
it's legal.
Yes, it's fine. Okay. All right. Well, we love you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me too.
My pleasure.
And it's been a blessing.
Thank you for leading by example and being the good stuff. And thank you guys for sharing this time with us. If you would click send, if you could copy and paste, we'd be so grateful. And check out thegoodstufffamily.com on ways that we're working on now that you can actually sponsor these live streams that we're doing. Fantastic dynamo people like this.
Thank you. And thank you for joining, everyone.
God bless.